I'm Rafael Morales. My wife is Jamie Morales, and my wife has known Jamie Moore since she was in the 7th grade, and so that's kind of how I know Jimmy and Jamie is via through my wife. And I've known Jimmy and Jamie. I've known Jamie as long as I've known my wife because I met her right away probably, and I've been with my wife almost 13 or 14 years. So I've known Jamie the whole time. And then I met Jimmy when he came into the picture. I would say I didn't know Jimmy as well as Jamie, even though we all lived in Myrtle Beach at the same time. We all had our careers and we were working. And then we made preparations to move to Atlanta, and I think at that time, Jimmy and Jamie just started getting together, and I think it moved pretty quickly and ended up moving to Greenville. So I'd hung out with Jimmy at some birthday parties and social events like that, but I didn't know Jimmy per se at the time. Just mostly acquaintances. I knew Jamie; she was in our wedding, and that type of thing.
When did you get to know Jimmy a little bit more?
After the accident.
Okay, so tell me about that in terms of how did you find out about the accident?
We were living here, and Jamie was in Greenville, and we had just kind of summed up Jamie Moore's wedding. Like, we had just gone to Myrtle Beach and done the whole thing, and then we were back here. I can't remember. I think they'd been married a couple months. And so they kept in contact, and then the day of the accident, Jamie Moore texted my wife, said Jimmy's been in a really bad accident. He's being medevaced or helevaced or whatever. We're in, and my wife was like, where? And she goes, here, and I can't remember. We came up the same day or the next day. We drove up to Greenville.
What did it kind of look like when you got there?
It was tough. He was, you couldn't recognize him. He had tubes coming in and out everywhere, and obviously he was in a coma. I think they had him in induced a coma because, the severity of what was going on. And Jamie was really distraught and just kind of giving us the information that she knew of what happened, or what she think happened, and what the doctors are telling her and what she should expect. It was very new, so there was a lot of unknowns at that time. I think we were there for a couple hours, and then Jimmy's mom and his sister showed up, so we kind of felt it was time for us to kind of give them their space, and so we left and came back. And I want to say he had surgery a couple days later, or the next day, and then they flew him to Atlanta. He wasn't in Greenville more than a week, I think.
Okay.
And then as soon as they came to Atlanta, we were there. I want to say almost every day.
What was Jamie like when you guys found her in the hospital?
She was upset. I think she was trying to be strong, still optimistic, because I think the severity of it was like, wow, this is really horrific. But I don't think she knew that, we would be here where we're at today. I don't think that had crossed her mind yet. I think that, from the beginning until probably he got released from the hospital, I think we were all hopeful that he would regain some sort of movement. So I don't think the whole time that it had set in for anybody that, that he wouldn't be able to move.
Yeah. How about, all right, so taking me heading out of Shepherd Center, so what were things like there?
I would say, I think they were pretty good. There were some episodes where, Jimmy would have some, I don't know what would happen, but, like, we were there almost every day for 3 or 4 hours a day, just trying to bring food, bring support, whatever we could do. Unless somebody else was coming in from town to visit, then we wouldn't be there. But other than that, we literally lived a mile away from the hospital. We offered Jamie to stay with us. She was staying at a hotel. If she had friends and family come visit, we weren't here, they would use our apartment because we were so close to the hospital. But there were some scary moments in there where, Jimmy would lose consciousness. They'd have to kind of try to revive him or something. Like, we'd have to get out of the room and they'd have to call everybody and we'd have to get out. A lot of scary moments. In between those, Jimmy was very optimistic, and that's how I knew of Jimmy. I always knew Jimmy as a very happy-go-lucky person. He had a lot of friends, knew a lot of people, very social, very active. So while we were there, he couldn't talk. So we're reading lips for, weeks, it felt like. Reading lips and trying to communicate and figure out. But, at the end of the day, there was always a smile after he talked. Not getting frustrated, being very patient. He was really good. It was very admirable to see him in that condition and trying to make everybody else feel comfortable and happy. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Under the circumstances, but while we were there, visitors, family, relatives, all that stuff.
I guess how do you feel about Jimmy's attitude overall in terms of how he has handled this whole thing?
I think he's handled it better than anybody I could imagine handling it. He's definitely gone through a roller coaster in terms of ups and downs. We've seen it, and the ups and downs it's not like a couple days. It could be like 2 or 3 months where it's not good. The last 2 years, ever since Spencer's been born, and I think he's got his head surgery and he got all that cleaned up. And then I think he had some sort of infection a couple of years ago. He was in the hospital. I think after all that kind of passed, he's come back around. He's gained energy. He's not on the ventilator as much. So his spirits are a lot better. But, there was a period there when for 3 years it was touch and go for months at a time where, he didn't want to get out of bed. We'd go over there and he'd talk. He'd just be down, I think, and I can't blame him, at all.
But you don't feel like that was consistent with his personality as you knew?
Not at all. Not at all. I think it hit hard, and I think I spoke with your father on the phone about this. I think it was the day he got released from the hospital. Jamie never went back to Greenville. She had a friend move all her stuff and pack her stuff. She never even saw the house get packed, and so we were there to receive it. We helped her, unpack and get everything in place, make room for the beds and the hospital bed and all this stuff. And then, we were at the hospital when he got released, getting the nurses over there, getting all his stuff in the car. And I think it was like when they figured out, when they left and she went to go book his next physical therapy appointment, they're like, well, workman's comp won't cover any more PT because his condition hasn't changed. So since he's not in the hospital, unless his condition changed, he's not going to get any more PT. And I think that's when it hit her, it hit him, this could be it, you know what I mean? And that's just kind of where things kind of set in, and they were just trying to go through the stage of recovery of, okay, well, now he's in a home setting, we need to figure out how this is going to work. The apartment that they lived in was teeny, it was 800 square feet, maybe, and he had a room, and you could just navigate to get the bed in there, get him out of bed, put him in the chair, roll through the hallway, and park it in one spot in the living room, and that's where he would be all day. I mean, the living room was probably the size of this office, and that's it. And that was it for I don't know how long. He just couldn't go anywhere,
And that was his daily existence.
That was his daily existence, and they didn't have a car yet. It took a really long time for them to get a car. It felt like a long time for me, so it was like, when we want to go out to dinner, go to a basketball game, just do anything to do an outing off the property of where he lived. I mean, we'd have to get a special van. The first Thanksgiving after the accident, they came to my grandmother's house. It was a fiasco trying to get him up there because the van up there had space for him, but then the one on the way back, he couldn't fit his head in there. It was just a mess. Making ramps to get him in. I mean, I've probably made half a dozen ramps trying to get him into my house here, my house in South Carolina, my grandmother's house. Just trying to accommodate him the best that I can. This weekend they were over the house for my daughter's birthday.
Mm-hmm.
I had an issue getting him up the hill. Trying to get him out of the backyard where we had the party. We had 8 guys pushing that chair up there because it was starting to sink in the rocks. Just.
So you're literally making ramps at places to.
Making ramps or bringing plywood. Just trying to do whatever I can to get him in the house. You know what I mean? So he's comfortable. And he doesn't feel like people are having to go out of the way, but there was no choice on Saturday.
Right.
There was probably 6 or 7 of us trying to literally pick this chair up and get it onto a solid ground to get him up the hill to accommodate him. I said, I'm sorry, Jimmy, this won't happen again, because usually I always try to make sure he's my first priority, that I know he's coming. He always comes when they're coming over to a party or anywhere. He's always first to arrive. Jamie gets him there first. In case there is any issues, we can address it and not make a scene, but unfortunately Saturday to get him out of there, it was a scene.
You've taken it upon yourself before to take him to basketball games, baseball
Yeah,
games.
we've gone to Hawks games. It's tough, because trying to get seating for him, trying to get him out, trying to line it up. Then we have to buy the nurse a ticket, and then at that time, and I don't know how it is now, but they were going through hard times financial. That's a completely different story, just beyond, you know, just every day, just keeping them happy and getting them up and getting them in his routine. Yeah, they went through a lot of stuff. You know, we loan them money, give them money. You know, we just pay for things just because the simplicity of trying to get reimbursed for a ticket or paying for, you know, it was just, yeah. But, you know, outings were hard, but we'd get through it. But, I mean, I'm not complaining. You know, he's the one that's in a hard place. But, yeah, we've gotten a lot busier with my work. But we always try to make sure that, you know, we go out of our way for Jimmy and them. They moved to Decatur and they're not as close anymore, but, you know, it's still a weekly thing, whether we see them, my wife sees them. Our kids are the exact same age, they're both 2. You know, they do everything together.
You talked a little bit about, tell me a little bit about Jimmy and Spencer. How has that kind of changed him or impacted his life?
I think it's given him a lot of, like, purpose, you know? She's, you know, Spencer's at that age, like my daughter, that they're really starting to comprehend, and when you tell them something, they either pay attention or they don't pay attention because they don't want to. So there's a lot of communication there now, and, you know, so it's really good. And my daughter's really, at first she was scared of him because of the chair, and now she's come around, Uncle Jimmy, so it's just kind of like, he gets a lot of energy from the kids, and he feels the love, you know. So I think it's been good more than anything else.
Good for him.
I guess it's been a lot for them, you know, with Accord sending different nurses over, nurses leaving, nurses not being able to accommodate, nurses not qualified. You know, like, it's just been hard, you know. Like, I think you know, he had a stroke a couple weeks ago. Right. A week and a half ago. Went to go visit him in the hospital. You know, speeches come back, but he couldn't speak that well the other day. You know, it just raises flags, you know, for Jamie probably. And for me, I worry, you know, like, you know, he had a stroke. You know, it's obviously to do with his conditions. He's got clots. There's other stuff going on inside that nobody can see. They can only, you know, intervene when it pops up. It's just kind of like, you know, that's something to worry about. You know, you know,
yeah,
it could get really bad. You know. Lucky it was a small one, but, you know, he's lucky to be alive from the accident, let alone everything that he's gone through, from, you know, cleaning up his head and the infections and all the medications and the bladder infections. You know, it's been tough, and, you know, he's expressed his want to get out more or to be comfortable in his own home, but he can't even do that. You know, like, we were trying in the past to try to get, okay, well, can I meet Jimmy out here instead of me going down there and picking him up with the nurse? Can the nurse? And they're like, no, somebody has to be attending to him. So, you know, he can't even go out in the car unless there's another person in the car while somebody else is driving. So I can't even, like, you know, meet him out anywhere or do anything because, so, like, sometimes it just doesn't work out. We wanted to go to a soccer game, you know, a few weeks ago for the new team here. And I had to work really early in the morning. I said, I can't go out there and pick him up, you know. I can meet him there and receive him and get him, you know, get him out of the van or wherever he's coming and stay with him and then put him back on. But I said, I don't have time to drive out there and come back because I have to get up at 2 o'clock in the morning. You know, it's things like that. You know, as much as I wanted to do it, I couldn't do it, you know. And then the logistics for her to try to figure out how to get him there and dealing with the traffic or who's going to, you know, it complicates it, you know, for them. He can't do just the simple things, even though he's got really not a lot going on. He just can't do, you know, he just can't get out. He's an adult. He should be able to kind of get out and roam free. They live in Decatur, but it's not that easy to get around for him, you know. You know, sidewalks aren't that user-friendly anymore and things like that. And I know Jamie's concerned about, you know, his care and what's going to happen if, you know, in the future with his care and how that's going to work. You know, it's hard. You know, we all come from humble backgrounds, you know, so it's trying to think of these big picture scenarios, and, you know, it's a lot for her. You know, she had to pick up that other job just to kind of have extra, you know, just to kind of like, okay, well, I want to go visit my parents, you know, where's that money going to come from? Because when they travel, it's not just everybody goes in one car. It's that, and the nurse is behind them with a car full of stuff that all his medical equipment, everything that he needs. You know, and they only take two vacations a year, I think, right now, and it's, you know, usually it's going home to visit her mom, her folks, so they could see the baby, and you know, his options are very limited to what he can do. You know, and just the living situation for them. I'm glad they're in the apartment they're in now. They've been there for a while. There's some space there, but it's tight. You know, it's almost like the same scenario. Like the bedroom, he comes out, goes in the hallway, and parks it in the living room, and parks it there. He's got one parking spot in the whole house. Mm-hmm. It's just tough, you know, to get around for him. You know, he can't make any. I don't know. He can't make plans to do anything. He has to just kind of wait for people to just kind of put things in his lap to make, you know, to see if he wants to do it, because it's very seldom that he'll ask to do something. If he asks to do something, Jamie really makes an effort to try to make it happen, but he doesn't ask because he knows it involves a lot. Somebody has to sacrifice, and my wife and I don't care. We'll do whatever. We just have to be asked. You know, there's a ton of things that have come up, but I had this conversation with them on Saturday with Jamie, and on 2 weeks ago when he was in the hospital. So he had the episode, I think it was in the evening.
Right.
They called the ambulance came and got him, they had to take him out. Jamie couldn't go to get up the next morning and hand him off, and I just said to my wife, I said, she can't do that. She needs to call us, she needs to tell us something's going on, and we can either go over there, one of us will watch Spencer, or she needs to bring him over here, something. But I said, she's Jamie's advocate. You know, what if something happens to him? She can't explain. Jimmy's unconscious. He can't explain what medication's he on, what he's gone through. You know, the nurses, like I said, some of them, they're not all there for me. They're not like a nurse at a hospital. They're just, you know, they probably take a certification class and can probably administer CPR, administer some drugs, but, you know, they're not problem solvers per se, in my opinion, because we've had stuff, and it's just kind of like, I told Jamie, I said, something happens to me, you need to tell Jamie to call us, to wake us up. Somebody will be there to make sure Spencer's taken care of, so she can ride in the ambulance with you. You know what I mean? It's just like things like that. I told Jamie that. She goes, well, I did call Jamie. I said, you called her the next day. I said, you need to just call us right away. We're not that far. We'll be there in less than 10 minutes. We'll take care of Spencer. You should be with Jimmy, because, you know, the nurses, they're there, but you never know who's on duty that day. You know, it was kind of like, we had an episode when Spencer was born. We had to plan the whole thing when she got administered, and we had to leave Jimmy at home until like it was like countdown 2 hours, and I think it was like, it's like 11 o'clock at night, you know, and I'm working crazy hours of the day. I'm staying up sometimes. My job requires me 18 hours a day because we're catering movie sets, and I'm literally waiting for her to say, okay, I have to go to the hospital, pick up the van, drive the van to go get him so he can watch his child being born. You know, and I think he had the flu, or he had something. He was really sick when it happened. And they put him up in his chair, and they were feeding him cough syrup or something. And there was I think it's called a CNA or whatever that comes to help him at night, and then the regular nurse on call. And so I'm in the living room, and all of a sudden they're like, Jamie, and he's like literally choking on cough syrup. And they're calling me to come in there to like help, and I'm like, you know, like, what do you want? You know, I just, at that time, you know, and Jimmy's conscious of it, and he's just like, it's frustrating, you know, like, these are the nurses, and they're coming in here screaming at me like, help, what am I supposed to do? You know what I mean? I can call 911, that's about it. You guys are the nurses, you know. So it took like, you know, an hour to get him out of the house, to calm down, to get him back, you know, because literally he's like coughing, and he can't breathe because he's choking on cough syrup. You know, and then to get him into the hospital and unload, I mean, it's just like stuff like that, you know, that I've seen, you know, with that Saturday with the chair, and him not being able, Jamie not being able to go to the hospital with him. Like, those are things that stick out in my head, and I know there's been more, you know, over the past 5 years. So it's hard for me when I'm around to even think to be in his shoes or her shoes, you know. It's a reminder, you know, like Saturday when they left, I'm like, oh, it felt terrible that he had to go through that at my house, because usually when he comes to my house, he's taken care of, you know. Try to get him in, I try to get him out, make sure he's comfortable, like we've accommodated him. He's not inconvenienced any more than he already is. So it's just hard, you know, it's hard to convey that to them, because I don't want them to know that we feel bad. as I said, I didn't know Jimmy that well before the accident. I know Jimmy now. I knew what he was like. I know what he is now. And so, we talk and stuff, but he's changed a lot. He's not the same person. I think he's trying to get back to that, but it's been a real hard road. It's been a real hard road. I'm talking. I remember there was 3 months where he just didn't want to talk to anybody. In-laws would come visit. He just wouldn't come out of his room. You'd go over there, he'd be sleeping, just because he's got no energy. And then when he wakes up, he's grumpy because the medication or headaches. It's hard. And then I know they were going to therapy separately, then together. That seemed to be helping for a little while because there was just some really rough patches there where it's just like, what can you do? Except talk to somebody because there's no cure.
He does have a lot of pain just on a daily basis in terms of just like sleeping, waking up, being around the house, that kind of thing, right?
Yeah, he does, and his routine is very, it's like he has. It's like I know that typically when we're over there, the CMAs come over about 6:30, 7 o'clock because they have to start prepping him for bed, and he's in bed from 9 till I don't know what time the next day. It used to change. Sometimes he wouldn't get out of bed till noon because he just didn't have the energy or the will to want to get out of bed. So it'd be, we want to do something, let's go to lunch. It's like, I can't get Jimmy out of the bed till 11:30 right now. Aren't the nurses and everybody there? Yeah, but he just physically doesn't feel up to getting out of the bed. It's, he does pains, he gets a lot of spasms, and, his legs fall off the chair and he'll be running. Sometimes he's run over his own foot. Just stuff like that. He gets a lot of spasms, stuff like that, just where everything starts jolting and he can't control it. It's just sometimes it can be dangerous for him. I think like I said, one time I think he almost ran over his foot or crushed his foot in the van because he was rolling up on the ramp and his foot came off and he kept going through it and his foot was in the way. I know that's happened a couple times.
Gotcha. How about, talk to me a little bit about how Jamie has dealt with all this. Jamie Moore.
Jamie Moore has been she's kind of more like me. She's emotional, but my wife's really sensitive and emotional. Jamie's more like me. She's just more of a critical thinker and a problem solver. So she tries to not get caught up in all the drama sometimes, and just tries to figure out, okay, well, what's going to happen next? What do I need to do? And I think that kind of helps her move through the day. She's trying to solve problems instead of trying to dwell on problems. She does that a lot more, in my opinion. You know what I mean? And that's how I am too. I really don't like to dwell as much. I just like to figure out the solution so it doesn't happen again, or we can get out of it. So she's really strong,
You just kind of had to be.
And she's had to be. There's no choice. You know what I mean? It's some women would just walk away. It just not. You know what I mean? It's never been a thought or an option. You know what I mean? They're both lucky to have each other, but it's just unfortunate that they had to find out this way.
Yeah.
It really is. But she's just been tremendous, and she's his advocate, and sometimes she just has to pick her battles too. I've seen her just bite her tongue, with nurses and people coming in and out, doctors, because it's if not, you're just fighting every day. You just can't even breathe because you're just with the stress level. It's like with my employees, it's like they all have their quirks, and sometimes it's just some days you just gotta let it slide because you're just I don't want to go there because I don't want to ruin my day because it's gonna come down on you, and then the next day you're gonna be doing the same thing. So it's I've seen her just kind of and then she kind of slowly has to phase nurses out, and that takes some time to get them out and get them replaced, because if she complains too much, then they come with attitude to work. I've seen that too. Trying to get rid of nurses, and after they get the word that they're not going to be there anymore, then it's uncomfortable in their own home, and then I'm uncomfortable when we go over there because, you know what I mean? So I think he has one nurse that has been with him from the beginning, which is Levi. I think that's it. I think all the other nurses have come and gone. And I think so Levi's been there from the beginning. I've seen one come and go. I know there was Teresa was one that he really liked, but that didn't work out. And there was another guy that I think he was post-military that he really liked. I can't remember his name. Real nice guy. and we'd go out to eat and stuff like that. But I think from where he lived and the schedule and then the other clients that the court had assigned him to, it just didn't work out. So pretty much every time I go see Jimmy now, he has a new nurse somewhere in the rotation. So I think Levi's been with him a while, and I think it's Bianca's the other one that's been with him for a couple years now. And she was at the party, and she was also there when we took Jimmy to the hospital to go see the baby born. So I remember her very well. She does a good job, and Levi does a good job, to the best of their abilities, of course. They all have their bad days. Mm-hmm. But other than that, you know, there's always a nurse on call. So I think when I went to the hospital a couple weeks ago, it was a new guy that was there. Mm-hmm. When I got there, I didn't recognize him. I just thought he was a regular nurse. He's like, no, this is my new nurse. You know what I mean? And I know when they travel, they have to really figure out the schedule months ahead to figure out which nurses are going to come, to schedule all that. Mm-hmm. You know, it's tough. It's a lot.
And obviously they're lucky to have some care and all, but they've pretty well got a total lack of privacy these days, don't they?
Oh, it doesn't exist. It doesn't exist at all. There is no privacy. You know, the nurses have their spot in the house, but it's not a house, it's an apartment. They're in the dining room that's been turned into a nurse office / you know, whatever. Mm-hmm. So anything that goes on in that house, they're fully aware of. Anything. There's no privacy whatsoever, you know. None. Yeah, it's non-existent, you know, and I know the walls are coming in on him, and, you know, he just wants to be somewhere where he doesn't feel like he just can only go 2 places in the house. You know, we've talked about that. I've had conversations with him about vacations. You know, it's like, you know, talking about, you know, my friend did a Viking cruise and his parents loved it and I want to do that, you know. Or it's like, well, Jimmy, it's like, what would be your ideal vacation? And he just said, I know he had some thought into it. He just said, I remember him saying this to me. This was like a couple months ago. He said, I just want to go somewhere where I can have fun and everybody else is having the same amount of fun that I am. I don't want to go anywhere and see people having more fun than me because I can't move.